Hello, class. So today I'd like to focus on two things. I'd like to say a couple things about research and how to make sure that you're using the best possible research sources of evidence in your speeches. And then I also want to make some observations about what makes a really good, informative topic. But before I do any of that, I just want to give a shout out to all of you for the great work that you're doing on the critic speech. I've really been pleased. I'm still working through those speeches. I should finish those in the next couple days, but you guys are just doing a great job. One, you're doing a good job maintaining that structural format in the actual presentation. In fact, listening to your speeches, it's like, okay, attention getter clear, topic sentence clear, thesis statement clear. So really good job with the overall structure of the speech. And really that's what I'm after with the critic speech. That whole assignment really is about learning how to structure and organize a speech. But also the presentations have been outstanding. You guys are really good speakers. And the more comfortable you get in front of speaking into that camera lens and the more confident you get in your abilities, you guys are just really taking off. Some of you, if I could mention one thing, and it's hard to do, especially if you're referring to notes when you're giving a presentation, that tends to speed up the rate. So really work on rate control. It's just so much easier for the audience and the viewers to be able to digest the information if you really learn to control that rate. And don't be afraid to use pauses. Pauses are great, even mid-sentence. You can use them when you change up the vocal variety a little bit. But boy, you guys are really doing well with the critic speeches. Real impressed. Good job on that presentation. So let's talk about research. And so the next two big speeches that you'll be doing will be the informative speech and the persuasive speech. And with those speeches, we're going to actually incorporate sources of evidence into those speeches. And public speaking is a little bit different as far as how we deal with sources. It's not like you finish a speech and go, oh, and here's where I got my information. Rather, we are citing our sources during the actual flow of the speech, and you'll see that in some of the sample speeches on the informative speech. And so when it comes to doing college level research and being able to tell the difference between research you can use, can't use, I always tell students, focus on three things. Now, some instructors are a little bit different. They'll ask you to focus on the endings if you're getting information on the internet. And really, that's the problem with doing college level research now, is the advent of the internet. I mean, it's great on one hand because you have access to all kinds of information, but that's also the drawback. You have access to all kinds of information. And so you really have to be able to learn how to tell a source that is a good source you can use and a source to stay away from. Some instructors, when it gets to the internet, they'll say, look at the endings, .com, .net, probably shouldn't use .org, .edu, .gov, better. I think that gets a little confusing. So I want you to use what we taught you in this module. To determine whether or not you can use a source in your speech, you must be able to tell the audience three things about the source. Where you got it, that would be the title of the publication. So that's the name of the book, the name of the journal, the name of the newspaper, the name of the magazine, the name of the internet, and you need to know the author, who said it, and the date. So now that makes it easier. If I'm doing research online and I'm on a particular website, I find some information I'd like to use in my speech. If I don't know who said it, if there's no author that I can find responsible for the information, and if I don't know when the information was posted, I'm not going to use the information. So when it comes to citing sources and using sources in a speech, title of the publication, and not the title of the article, right? We don't want the name of the article. You know the reason why? Because we've actually got to learn the sources if we're delivering a speech, especially if we're delivering a speech without the use of notes. And the titles for articles are longer than the title of the publication. So maybe I find an article in the San Francisco Chronicle that I want to use. I find it on their website, sfgate.com. So when I cite that source in a speech, and according to an article in the San Francisco Chronicle by Joe Smith on February 2nd, 2019. That's it. Title, publication, author, date. Then I give the information from the source. I always state my source citation before I give the information because I'm trying to establish the credibility of that info. So that's what you're going through right now. The biggest takeaway I want you to get from that is to know that a good source, I know who said it and when it was said. And then also remember this when it comes to using sources, especially for your college level work, primacy is recency. What that means is the most recent sources are always the best sources. So now that we're in 2020, for most of you, and it depends on the topic that you use, but let's not go back more than 2 or 3 years on the sources, right? You get something from, maybe 1998 might fit your speech, but has a lot happened since then. So that could be an outdated source. Always use the most recent sources. All right. Second thing I want to talk about would be how to come up with a good topic for an informative speech. We're done with the critic speeches. Now we're focusing on research. The next module, you'll start learning about how to put together an informative speech. And we're really going to do the same thing that we did with the critic speech. You're going to put together an outline for your informative speech. You'll submit that. I'll give you feedback on the outline. You'll make a couple tweaks, and then you'll use that outline to learn and then to deliver the informative speech. Now, good topics for an informative speech always do two things, the two A's. You want to amuse and amaze your audience. And so virtually any topic can work for an informative speech as long as you follow these two simple guidelines. And really what I'm teaching you right now is how to tell the difference between an informative speech and a persuasive speech. And we're going to do persuasive speeches right after the informative, so we don't want to get a topic that really works better as a persuasive speech and try to shoehorn it in and do it as an informative. So when it comes to good informative topics, it's kind of the process of elimination. So one, I want to make sure that I have a topic that is significant and relevant enough to the audience that they'll be interested in what it is that I'm talking about. And that doesn't necessarily mean that right off the bat they'll be interested, but I can use my speech to draw them in and make that speech feel like this is relevant information. So good informative topics always relate well to the audience. Number two, a good informative topic should not focus on a problem to be solved. And this is really where we tell the difference between an informative topic and a persuasive topic. So let's say you're brainstorming for an informative topics and you come up with the idea of, well, Aunt Martha really suffers with depression. So I think I'd like to learn about that. I'm going to do an informative speech on depression. And so then my question would be, so would most of the information that you give us focus on a problem? Oh, yeah. In fact, if you kind of look at the overall structure, you're going to do a speech on depression. I'm pretty sure you're going to talk about what causes it, right? You're probably also going to talk about how much it sucks, like the negative consequences, the negative effects of depression. And more importantly, you'll probably give us things we can do to help alleviate or solve for depression. So see how that topic, based on the information you present, really fits the persuasive mold, which is all about problem solving. So depression would not work as a good topic for an informative speech because it is a problem to be solved. Well, how about drunk driving? I'll do that as an informative speech. No, because really, drunk driving is a problem to be solved. So same thing, you tell us about all of the number of accidents, the deaths, how it's so bad, and then give us solutions on what more we can do to try to solve for driving drunk. So one of the key factors is with a good informative topic, will not focus on a problem to be solved. And then second, it also shouldn't focus on an issue of controversy. So you don't want to take a controversial issue, like maybe climate change. Well, it's controversial to some, right? So maybe you're going to focus on climate change, right, as an issue of controversy, and you're going to give your side why we need to do more for climate change. Still a persuasive speech. So if it's an issue of controversy, stay away from it. Now, There is one way to get around that. Let's say you have a really good topic and really you just want to give us information about the topic, even though it could be seen as an issue of controversy. The way you get around that and keep it informative, meaning I'm not objectively trying to get you to take one side of the issue or the other, then what you do in your last main point and in the informative speeches will have three main points. That last main point could focus both on the advantages and the disadvantages. So from that standpoint, that's the only way really you can work in an issue of controversy as an informative speech if you come across as objective and you have in at least one of your main points, usually the third is the best main point to do it. I'm talking about the benefits and the drawbacks or the advantages and the disadvantages. So when it comes to topic selection, you want a good topic that's relevant to the audience, doesn't focus on a problem, doesn't focus on an issue of controversy. And really, to get started with the brainstorming, I always tell students, think of a noun. Good way to come up with informative topics. Well, what are the three categories of a noun? Person, place, things. Do your speech on a person. That's a great way to meet the informative assignment. As long as that person is well known enough that you'll be able to do research on the individual, and the audience should have some interest in learning about that particular individual. And I would say in a college classroom, the relevance is there. You're in college to learn, so you can do a speech just about anybody as long as there's something we can learn in understanding more about that individual. Places, also, great topic for an informative speech. And then you can get into things, really anything can work. And I always kind of tell students with things as an informative topic, you can kind of go technological, scientific, new inventions, cool cutting edge techniques that are out there, or you can focus on more of the everyday fun, what I call recreation or household activities. What I mean by that is you could essentially walk around your house with a pad and a pen and just start writing stuff down. You'll come up with all kinds of really cool ideas for informative speeches. And I've heard lots of them over the years, like an informative speech. In fact, one of the funniest speeches that I've ever heard was an informative speech on the history of the brassiere. And the thing I took away from that speech, and I kid you not, the name of the German that invented the first bra, you know what his name was? Otto Titzlinger. How funny is that? So those are speeches that can be fun, can be entertaining, they're kind of light, but I've heard speeches on things like coffee, tea, peanut butter. I've heard speeches on things like vinegar, recreational things like skateboarding. So any of those topics can work as an informative speech as well. So the key with that informative topic, you want a topic that amuses and amazes the audience, relates to them, doesn't focus on a problem, doesn't focus on an issue of controversy. And the cool thing about taking this class online, and this really opened up, I saw this at the end of the spring semester when we were online for the first time. Another good way to do the informative speech assignment is to do a how-to speech. Teach us how to do something. You just have to make sure that you can find at least 3 sources of information on that. So when you do some research, there's some information. So you also learn how to cite the sources into the speech. But I saw all kinds of really cool how-to or demonstrative speeches as an informative speech. I learned how to make quesadillas. I learned how to make chocolate chip muffins. I learned how to do a new basketball workout if I ever got back on the basketball court again. So all kinds of good ways to meet this informative topic. And really just 3 things in closing. For that informative topic, you want to make sure you have a topic that you like, something that you think will be cool for the audience, and something that you can be really entertaining with. All right, you guys, be well. I'm hanging in there. I'm going to get through the rest of the critic speeches. I should be through them by Thursday. So if you haven't got your critic speech back, it's coming shortly. All right, you guys, take care. We'll talk to you next Wednesday.